For whatever reason, when it comes to audiophile grade equipment, European brands are certainly big players, and today's feature brand is no exception. We're talking about Ground Zero, a brand from Germany with an incredible offering within car audio, but today we're going to focus on the upper echelon in that offering, which of course they have quite a bit to offer. We've got our product expert Jacob Brown joining us, along with Jaron Gelmalon from Importel, the 12-volt Viking, on a discussion about ultra high-end from Ground Zero. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM, all about Ground Zero, and it starts now. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and we're talking about audiophile grade components. We're talking about the top of the top, the upper echelon, the highest end gear with no compromise, and the brand that we're focused on today certainly delivers in spades when it comes to this subject matter. Now, thank you for joining us, Jacob. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because Ground Zero offers certain things that, well, quite simply put, no other company does. So can you give us a brief overview of what we're going to be chatting about today?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that when I think audiophile or I think SQ, you're right. The European brands are almost where my focus is. And that's not to say that there aren't a ton of great manufacturers out there, but it really kind of hits home with me. So when I'm sitting here thinking about SQ or audiophile, Ground Zero is one of the top manufacturers. I mean, whether you're looking at ESO awards or anything along those lines, look at what we've managed to accomplish over the last year and a half. So when you ask about what products are we going to talk about, I definitely like to bring up the ultra or ultra reference or ultra high end, depending on how you want to word it, series of equipment. And then we can talk about, I'm not going to say the trickle down effect, but the entire line of what we can all deem as audiophile or high-end SQ, with talking about plutonium, talking about uranium, and most certainly, the long-established reference that kind of falls in between those lines. So we can definitely talk about some really cool stuff.
All right, Jacob, very excited to get into it with you. But first, an opportunity for our great partner, SiriusXM, to remind dealers out there why they should love it. And when we come back, I've got Jacob Brown from Ground Zero and Jaron, and we're going to talk a little bit about audiophile gear. Don't you dare go away.
Hey guys, Ricky Lima here from SiriusXM. I had a chance to speak to some dealers and ask them what they love about selling SiriusXM. Here's what they had to say.
Coast-to-coast coverage.
I love SiriusXM for commercial-free music.
It's a great add-on sale and a profit opportunity.
We love selling SiriusXM because you can listen to the same channel coast to coast.
Profitability and ease of installation. It's a no-brainer.
We love selling SiriusXM for its ease of installation, great profitability, and reliability.
People love it.
All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. We're going to get into it right away. And out of the gate, I want to establish something that is very important in all messaging when it comes to Ground Zero. The Ground Zero brand, again, from Germany, originally from the US, but it's a brand that has a very, very large offering. And all of this translates into just a demonstration of how passionate Ground Zero is about audio. Now, today, obviously, we'll be focusing in on more reference, more higher end portion of the catalog. But I want to give Jacob an opportunity to kind of express from a Ground Zero perspective how that passion translates into the high-end products that Ground Zero has produced.
So you're right. I mean, when you talk about how it translates, we're not necessarily talking about specs or technologies or anything along those lines. What we really focus on is what a lot of us got started in car audio because of. And that is some sort of an emotion or a, this is really cool, or like, that's dumb fun. And I think it all does work and play with the concept of high end. If you think high-end listening rooms or high-end experiences, you're not sitting here talking about, oh, this is the most technically advanced whatever. You're talking about the set of speakers that's going to bring a tear to your eye, the amplifier that's going to make you feel warm and fuzzy. But we're not talking about it from a tech perspective. And I think that really does translate a lot to Ground Zero. The passion, the drive, it's all based on the fact that we love music, we love car audio, we love what we do. And I think when you start to hear and experience some of the gear, especially the higher end reference caliber quality of product, it translates exactly that way. It translates as emotion.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me on to join you guys to talk Audiophiles. And I just want to echo kind of what Jacob says with the passion. And I see a lot of passion within this industry, and a lot of the passionate people within this industry got into this industry because of experiences that they've had. They probably, lots of them remember the first time they heard a high-end car audio system, or 210s that just wailed you right in the chest, and it just kept growing from there, and you wanted to kind of echo that experience and relive that experience, and you kept going higher and higher and higher, and that's when you ended up with these high-end reference builds, these reference series amplifiers, all the way up to ultra, and that's where it kind of, that passion comes from. And we don't want to negate the fact that Ground Zero is still a company that's very strong within the European market, within sound competitions. And that's where these enthusiasts go to show off to other people the sound competitions and really strive for that greatness, strive for that experience. Jacob, if you can touch on Ground Zero's history within sound competitions, and also what they're still doing currently within sound competitions.
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of fun to stop and think about the fact that, you know, audio competitions, whether it's SQ or SPL or even some of the ESQL dumb fun type stuff, is still around and kicking. And Ground Zero is a massive sponsor of this. So, you know, we're an international sponsor for EMA. We compete as a company in IASCA, MECA, all of the kind of things that are out there. But to be able to provide manufacturer support internationally for some of these governing bodies is, again, what kind of drives it. I mean, yes, US and Canada, it's not quite what it used to be, but when you look at Europe, when you look at Asia, these contests, so to speak, and competitions are a lot of what drive sales. They're a lot of what drive brand awareness. They're a lot of what drive the idea of, you know, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. You know, let's use the NASCAR analogy. So it is really cool to still be involved across the planet in all of the governing bodies that we are, to accurately represent, from a technical standpoint, the passion that we bring to the table.
Now, Jacob, staying on this conversation about international commitment to the competitions comes also another interesting, I feel, benefit from Ground Zero, and that is the type of personalities and the skill set, the pool, the resources that Ground Zero has to lean on when it comes to product development, especially in the higher end side of things. I had the opportunity to meet one of these people. I want you to kind of describe some of these key team players that Ground Zero has on staff that really make a difference in the broader, higher level kind of decision making and development of Ground Zero products.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and assume you're talking about Peter Vlodquist, and he is just part of the team. You know, and if we start from the back, if we start from the history, a lot of the team members that are with Ground Zero still to this day were part of the original distribution team in Germany. So when Ground Zero, which was originally based out of LA, decided to kind of call it quits, it was bought by the German distributor, and that team, for the most part, is still entirely involved. So these are a group of car audio guys that have been around the industry for 30 plus years, still driving the development of the brand, the focus of the brand, whether it is SQ or everything else that we do, you know, Audiophile to SPL. It's all still part of the same DNA that's been around since day one. And yes, we've seen some staff changes. The entire US team is now a lot more involved with Ground Zero, that they've welcomed us in with open arms as part of the family. And we've seen other kind of transitions happen. So again, you know, Peter Vlodquist, formerly of a lot of European championship wins, is one of the heads of our, I guess, steering of the SQ side. I don't want to necessarily limit it to product development, because he has a big, you know, his thumb is in every aspect of SQ and some of the pro stuff, and making sure we have some of the best sounding gear available. but he also really is the drive with the competition background to make sure that our high-end gear is doing exactly what we say it's doing. And that's relevant in one of the most recent projects that he's had his hand in, which is the Ultra. You know, I mean, to be told that it will probably be very likely this amplifier will ever be beaten by something better. And I'm not talking from a competition standpoint. I'm talking from an experience standpoint. Goes to show what this team brings together, brings to market, brings to the consumer and the retailers, just to be able to say, look, this is what we do.
Yeah, anytime, I want to echo what Jacob said, anytime that you meet a member of the Ground Zero team, be it from the distributor level, like myself, all the way up to the high-end guys at Ground Zero, they all are very passionate about car audio. It's not to them moving boxes. It's about the passion of car audio. And I think that's why the product lines that we're going to talk about in the Audiophile, or SQ as everyone puts it, are so great, is because the passion is behind it. And I keep bringing up this word passion, but I think it's an important word when you talk audiophile, because audiophile can be a very huge range for different people, but they're all passionate about music at the end of the day. So that passion kind of brought the Ultra lineup out for Ground Zero. And I want Jacob to kind of discuss what Ultra means for Ground Zero and what kind of came behind the Ultra lineup to really give that high-end line for that audiophile customer.
Yeah, so you pretty much nailed it. I mean, when we talk about passion, passion is fueled by emotion. And I think, at least for me, Ultra is the culmination and end result of the desire to translate emotion. And I know I've probably said that throughout this conversation, and pretty much any conversation I have with Ultra or regarding Ultra, is that it's one of the first times I've ever really been able to sit down and explain what I'm experiencing with feelings and absolutely nothing technical. So I was having a conversation this morning with an acquaintance / friend of mine, and we kind of nailed it. There's nothing we can really say about Ultra from a technical standpoint that can't just be summed up by, holy crap, this is good. And when you can say that about audio, when you can say that about what you're feeling and what you're experiencing in this listening environment, it really does bring home what we're trying to accomplish. So between the Ultra A2, which is our true dual mono, end of the line, top tier, all original design, you know, from a phenomenal world-renowned British amp designer, down to the 30 millimeter silk dome chambered tweeter, the 165 millimeter mid bass. It really is, there is no stop. There is no limit. We designed these speakers and amplifiers to be able to translate emotion. Whether it's one of my favorite songs recently, Jolene by Dolly Parton, from the Dumplin' soundtrack, it's not young Dolly. And you hear it in her voice, and you hear the strain, and you hear the emotion, and you get a chill running down the back of your neck, because now you're feeling the same fears that she is. Johnny Cash's Hurt, you know, the Nine Inch Nails cover, you feel almost the emotion in his voice of the torment and torture he's been through. And I can't exactly say that I've experienced that in my career, other than what Jaron was saying earlier about, you know, the first top tier car audio system that you ever heard, whether it was the impact of 210s when you're 8, or a top end listening, like a reference system. This is the first time in my career that I've really been able to feel that. And it comes from passion. It comes from emotion. And we took out all the stops when it came to finding the cone materials, or designing the tweeter chamber to eliminate standing waves, or using switches on the amplifiers instead of a pot, so that we can actually, with almost 100% certainty, control the gain structure of the amplifier and the bias structure of the amplifier. We know exactly the custom built caps that are used in that are unlike anything else on the market. So we've really not only strived for what we feel is the best, but we've had parts made to be able to accomplish that goal. And at the strive and the drive and the desire for pure emotion, you cannot hold back. And I think the Ultra series really shows that.
Jacob, I have to tell you, when I had a chance to have this Ultra amplifier in my hands and the drivers in my hands, there is no doubt that the craftsmanship is 100% there. I just want to echo or highlight a couple of things that I feel really make this stand out. And forgive me if you've already said them, but I want to make sure our listeners hear this. I mean, this is an amplifier that's absolutely created out of pure love. It's a love child. It's handmade in England. It's got Swiss parts in there. It's got rhodium connectors. It's dual mono. It's got opportunity to do liquid cooling. This is not the result of people who are not passionate about absolutely taking it to the nth level. And with zero compromise. I do want to highlight how special this Ultra series of product is. Now, that withstanding, there are other levels of products within the Ground Zero catalog that I certainly have no problem claiming are audiophile grade. In fact, while some brands have one series of products in the audiophile grade category, I feel that Ground Zero is special in the sense that within audiophile grade, there's probably a good, better, best, and even ultra offering. So let's break that down a little bit. I want to bring up a series that's been around for some time, but it's got an iconic name. You've said it in this conversation, and it's called Reference.
Yeah, so Reference is what used to be our top tier. And I'm not saying that there is any slouch in the componentry or the design or implementation of the Reference gear, but it was really good, and Ultra is that much better. But the thing that we have to think about is, and you had kind of said, you know, good, better, best, Ultra, or this mentality of a good, better, best. And I don't necessarily want to say that that's entirely true when it comes to sound quality or audiophile, because we're talking about a subjective thought process here. So the cool thing about Reference, for example, is it's a different thought process in the audiophile or SQ world. So is it a hand-built in England amplifier with switches on the gain? No. But is it an absolutely beautiful sounding, warm, relatively neutral sounding amplifier that's going to give you great power in that topology? I mean, you're sitting here looking at one here in my background. And yes, absolutely, they are still phenomenal amplifiers. The speaker line was absolutely unlike anything else in the let's call it mass-produced boutique audio world. I know it's kind of a oxymoron, but it really is kind of a different world. So it is a line that is staying current. It's not being replaced by anything else. And that's really cool to talk about Reference in regard to the fact that there is now one higher in price point. There are a couple lower in price point, but we haven't forgotten about what got us here, especially considering how long Reference has been around.
Yeah, you talk about Reference and it's used as like an it word. This is the Reference, and now there is a series above the Reference. But as we say, there's also a series below, maybe in price point, but could it meet any audiophile customer's needs? Certainly it could. And that's what's great about Ground Zero. Everyone has different kind of tastes, and some people like it spicy, others maybe not so spicy. So this might be a speaker line that is a little less spicy for you, maybe a little bit nicer on the wallet. Jacob, could you touch on kind of what the Plutonium speaker and amplifier series is about and what products are involved in that one?
Yeah, Jaron, you're exactly right. I mean, depending on the style of food, I like it really spicy or not at all. So Plutonium for me is kind of a fun one because the Plutonium speakers themselves are relatively new. For those in Canada, you haven't gotten a chance to experience those yet, but you've gotten a chance to experience Plutonium. For us down here in the US, we've had plenty of opportunity to kind of play around with Plutonium, the new series of components, and man, they are absolutely fun to listen to. And the cool thing is it's a different it's a different thought process. It's a different style of speaker. We're not going from paper to paper to paper and trying to justify who, what, when, where, why, and how. It's a different material. So on plutonium, you've got a weighted ceramic coated aluminum cone. And when I say weighted, it's a control weighting. It's not a make it heavier weighting. We utilize a different style dust cap that will help offset the characteristics of the aluminum cone. The mid-range is an aluminum cone mid as well. So you kind of maintain some lightweightness, accuracy, detail through that, but not necessarily as forgiving as maybe a paper, but you still have a silk dome tweeter to pair with it. So, and that tweeter is chambered. It's absolutely beautiful. It's smooth, but in an SQ lineup, depending on your style, depending on your listening preference, it might be a little more fatiguing or a little more unforgiving. So again, we're talking about that flavor profile when you're cooking a dish. Everybody can make ribs. How they make them is entirely different. And I think with plutonium, it's again that, you know, I love the reference, but maybe I want something more nitpicky. And maybe that might be the plutonium based on cone materials or based on power requirements. So it's really cool to be able to step sideways and maybe down to be able to get into a different set of, again, SQ or audiophile speakers that might absolutely foot the bill for a particular customer. When we talk about the amps are kind of interesting because I believe that all of our, let's call them SQ amplifiers, can be mixed and matched within the line. So you're talking about an Ultra build, you might not necessarily need, or you can't run an Ultra amplifier on a single sub. So you might want to step down to a plutonium 2-channel to be able to make great power bridge to a single 10 or a single 12 and still have great control, great sound signature, adjustable bias. So you can still maintain some of those SQ characteristics that a lot of our higher end amplifiers are known for, but not necessarily go full tilt with an Ultra and 2 10s and run full bias and go, let's call it bat crap insane. So it's cool how the lines mix together and work together, but also stand on their own.
I love the fact that we're kind of talking about, or we're using an analogy referring to food and different flavors and different tastes, because the final piece of this audiophile offering from Ground Zero, again, has a different flavor. And I think there's certainly an audience for this flavor, not only from the price point, but also from the sound signature. So could you talk to us a little bit and describe some of the unique characteristics from the Uranium line?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If you're having a conversation with me, it's either car audio or food, so why not put them together? I'm a fat kid, and I'm happy about that. So yeah, I mean, when we talk about flavor profiles, and we talk about car audio in general, because everybody has different tastes, there is always going to be a need for variety. Uranium's a really cool line to me because it's our first series of amplifiers that dive into what I would call more of an SQ or audiophile thought process, because that is the first amplifier that we have with the adjustable bias. So I can make that amplifier behave more like a Class A amplifier than a traditional Class A-B for tweeters and mid-ranges. I can do that same thing for mid-bass, but it's obviously still going to make the power that is needed to be able to run a mid-bass efficiently. The 2-channel can be fully biased and run a sub, and it's going to heat up. It's going to be less efficient, but it's going to introduce warmth and some not odd, but some wonderful characteristics of the soundstage, including what some have described as an openness and an airiness that just can't really be explained by a traditional Class A-B that doesn't have an adjustable bias or that is biased more towards making power and efficiency. The speakers are really cool because it's a little bit, well, it's our most extensive lineup. So not only do we have a wonderful 28 millimeter Silk Dome AP tuned tweeter and a 6.5-inch Neo motored mid bass with an aluminum cone, and again that perfectly tuned dust cap to help control the cone, but we've also got 3 mid ranges. So we have what some would call a wideband or a full range in a 60 millimeter format. We have a 55 millimeter dome mid, which is absolutely beautiful to play with and listen to. And then we've also got a traditional an additional traditional 80 millimeter cone mid range. Now, I touch on the 55 millimeter dome mid because Dome mids are one of those weird love them or hate them type things. And I think they get a bad rap because we're trying to do currently what we used to have to do back in the day. And that's low crossover points to try and raise stage and so on and so forth. But our dome mid is absolutely beautiful when played within spec and utilizing a DSP for time alignment and all the other fun stuff to help steer a car. So it's definitely a line that I think stands on its own when it comes to SQ, as many of you have experienced either at Knowledge Fest or MasterTech, and that is Doug Dobson's Audi Q5. That car is what some would say the best sounding car on any property it goes to, and it's full uranium with not even a uranium sub, with a hydrogen flat sub. So it's all uranium amplifiers, it's all uranium speakers, and then a sub that shouldn't even be in an SQ category, but it is. So we've all gotten to experience, many of us have gotten to experience this build and know that that is our, I don't want to say entry level to SQ because I don't think that's fair, but it's definitely what I would equate to our jumping off point for an audiophile conversation. So uranium, again, to me is really cool because it can do all of the things that it wants to do. It can do all of the things that it's asked to do, and it isn't going to really set you back a whole lot when it comes to finances. But at the same time, it's going to over deliver like so much of the Ground Zero product line.
Yeah, uranium's definitely going to be a go-to line for us in Canada. It's our bread and butter line as you talk SQ, just because the thought process on uranium is slightly different than your Ultra reference. Uranium is more full line, has more speaker options within it to fit the modern cars locations or different options of modern cars, whether it be an 80 mil, 65 mil. Whereas you're into the Ultra and reference, here's your speaker placement, let's build the car around it. From my personal experience, I got a chance to hear Doug Dobson's car at Knowledge Fest Las Vegas with the uranium amplifiers, uranium speakers, and the hydrogen thin 10 woofer. And I was blown away by the experience, of course. Anytime you get to listen to a vehicle built by the Ground Zero team, you're usually blown away by the experience. But the tonality and the definition within those speakers is just unbelievable. And for what it costs, you just blown away by it. And recently I was at SEMA, got a chance to hear a Plutonium build Rob's WRX, which is a daily driver car. So you see the car and you don't see much has changed within the car, but it houses those Plutonium speakers in it. And again, the tonality and the attack of those speakers is just paramount. He was running 410s in the back, so it did have that extra cheese. I'm going to call it, because we were talking spice earlier, so I'm going to call woofers cheese now. And just blown away by the experience. And anytime you get a chance to hear one of these vehicles, I suggest you sit in one and take the time to listen. And the Ground Zero team is more than welcome to help you out with that.
I want to take this opportunity and thank my special guest today, both Jacob Brown from Ground Zero, as well as the 12-volt Viking himself, Jaron Jelmalan from Importel, for joining in on this conversation about audiophile grade with Ground Zero. Now, of course, if you're looking for more information, specifications, and all that nerdy stuff, head on over to the official Ground Zero website, as you'll see on the screen right now. And if you happen to be a dealer in Canada and you're intrigued and want to know more about Ground Zero, hit up the folks at Importel, for they're the distributor for all things Ground Zero here in Canada. Now, in my closing statements, I am absolutely moved by Jaron's testimonial here about his experience in the vehicle. And I wanted to take an opportunity to share with you my personal experience in Doug's car. You know, we spent the entire conversation today talking about the passion for the music. Yes, we spent some time on breaking down some of the offering because, of course, Ground Zero does have quite the elaborate offering at the higher end of the spectrum. But I can't help but bring up the feeling that I had sitting in Doug's car, not knowing the equipment, or more importantly, the price tag of the equipment that I was listening to. As Jaron had said, I want to echo the emotion, the crisp highs, the vocals. Doug brought me through an entire range of different types of music, from instrument to electronic. And I was absolutely blown away as well. You know, I get spoiled. I get to sit on some of the top cars in the world and give it a listen. And this one left me speechless, especially when I found out the grade of equipment that was in this car. Not because I was disappointed that it wasn't higher end, but the fact that it was the uranium line, which is touted as entry level SQ, whatever that means, didn't even matter. Because at the end of the day, audiophile is a subjective term. And for me, that was about as an audiophile experience as it gets. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.
There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM with over 150 channels in your vehicle. Your Platinum plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video on Demand. What you love is on now.